So another big weekend of racing on the way, and Ben Fearnley's the man who's tasked with picking us a few winners today, Ben. And it should be a really informative weekend. There's a chance to have a look at the 2-year-old generation.
Yeah, it's the Royal Lodge has been a really good race, hasn't it, over the last many years really. But had Roaring Lion obviously announced himself there last year. That was the sort of first time we really saw him in a proper race really, when he came and won that by a neck from Nelson last year. So I mean, we might well have another sort of star emerge this time around. If you look further back, you've got the likes of Elm Park that won it, who obviously went on to win the Group 1 racing. Well, it's not the Race First Trophy anymore, but there's clues for this season and next in this race is what I'm trying to say really. And yeah, we've got a deep field really, 10 runners, all of them, nearly all of them open to some sort of improvement, plenty of Timeform Ps banded around there. Arthur Kitt's the one that's currently favourite, currently top rated, sorry.
I was going to say Beatbox is your favourite.
Beatbox is favourite, and I mean he would have a bit to find on ratings. I do think he looks a bit short, really, to be honest. I mean he's obviously created a really good impression in his 2 runs. He's unbeaten in 2. He didn't have a great deal to beat when he was 3-1 on at Haydock last time. He made the running. He barely came off the bridle, but I mean the field is going to be a hell of a lot more competitive this time around. I just thought that I was surprised to see him, 2-1 or so, really, to be honest.
Yeah, do you think that's because of the names next to him, John Gosden and Dettori, rather than what he's shown so far?
Yeah, it might well be. I mean, I'm surprised to see the Aidan O'Brien trained Cape of Good Hope essentially a bit more than double his price. I think he's around 5-1. I think that's the wrong way around, really. If you look at Cape of Good Hope's form, it's got much more substance to it. He finished second in the Superlative Stakes behind the Charlie Appleby horse that went on to win again recently, Quarto. And I mean, he's obviously now rated 122p with Timeform Quarto. So there's absolutely no shame in that, and that form has obviously been advertised very well. So I mean, on form, he should be a lot shorter, I thought, and obviously Aidan O'Brien has had a few issues with some of his string, but this horse has been off since then, been off 77 days, but he'll have been freshened up, and I'm sure he'll come back and he'll be ready to run a career best. And I thought that he would probably the one that made most appeal at the prices, to be honest. I mean, Arthur Kitt, he's had a few more goes in really good races, I think, and that's partly the reason why he's top rated, is that he's had 2 goes in good races at Ascot when he won the Chesham, and then obviously in the Solario last time behind Two Darn Hot. That's good form as well. You can't knock that, and you can't really knock his chances too much. But he's probably about the right price, whereas I thought that perhaps Cape of Good Hope was a little bit overpriced. The other thing to mention about this, potentially about this card in total, in general, the straight course races at least, is obviously we saw on the Thursday of the meeting when the stalls were stand side, the rail seemed to be a big advantage really. There was 3 or 4 races where everything else was floundering towards the middle of the track, and the horses that raced towards that rail were still on the bridle. So I think that that could be at play tomorrow. Today the stalls are on the other side, on the far side, so they were racing in a different part of the track. But tomorrow the stalls are in the middle, so they could track over to the rail. We don't know if that's going to happen. It's all sort of theory really, but it could be that high-drawn runners track over to that rail and have some sort of advantage. And if you are sort of thinking that might happen, you've got Beatboxer. He's a front runner and he's well placed to come over to the rail in stall 9, and Cape of Good Hope, who's another front runner, again well placed to track over if that does happen. But we'll have to monitor it. The Royal Lodge will probably be the race that we see what the jockeys are thinking really, if they're going to stay down the middle or whether they're going to come over. But just something to bear in mind throughout the card. Really, it was definitely a big advantage to be on that rail on Thursday.
I was quickly going to ask you about Kadar as well, because
Yeah.
he's just the one start so far, and I think it's interesting that he's as short as he is, about 5-1 in the minute. Look, I mean, battled all the way to the line last time.
He did, yeah. He beat Voldstern that day, who had already made a really impressive winning start. I think Voldstern's probably going to be more of a staying type, and perhaps that was what caught him out over a sharp mile at Haydock. But you definitely can't crab Kadar. He obviously was still inexperienced. He was still quite a raw horse, as you'd imagine. It was his first start. He's going to come on loads for that, isn't he? I mean, on form, like you say, on form, the price he is almost contradictory to that, because you're thinking, well, he's only achieved this, and he's 5-1 or so, isn't he? But in reality, I think he'll take a massive leap forward and improve a stone or so for that. I'd be no surprise to see him go close in a race like this, and he's a fascinating runner. It's just whether he's battle hardened enough to take on some of these horses who have had plenty of goes in similar races.
But at the prices, it's Cape of Good Hope.
Yeah, I think Cape of Good Hope would definitely interest me. He's got really solid form. If there is some kind of draw bias, he'll be able to tack over to that rail. So he's got that in his favour, and he's 5-1. And it's not often that you see an Aidan O'Brien first string for a race like this, third or fourth in the betting, and that is what we've got in this case. So I think he's a good bet.
Okay, we'll jump on to the Cheveley Park Stakes next, and Fillies Group 1, and we've got one here who has made a scorching impression so far in Pretty Pollyanna. Already got a Group 1 under her belt as well at Deauville. She beat Signora Cabello that day. Can you see any reason why that form could be overturned?
Not particularly, not on the face of it. Obviously these are 2-year-olds, and they're all improving at different rates. It wouldn't be a huge shock if Signora Cabello did turn that form around. There's obviously not that much between them. They're both two of the best fillies around, essentially, and that's why they're clashing in this 2-year-old fillies around. That's why they're clashing in this Cheveley Park. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I thought the one that was perhaps overpriced, it's mainly due to unfashionable connections, but Lady Kea would certainly have a chance, and at a bigger price you wouldn't really rule her out, and the fact that she's trained by Sheila Lavery means that if she was trained by Aidan O'Brien and she'd finish second in the Moyglare, she'd be a lot shorter than she is currently, but you can't knock her form at all. Beating 2 lengths in a Group 1 last time. She's still open to further improvement as well. She's only had 4 starts, and she was thrown in deep from the beginning, near enough. So there could be more to come from her, and she posted a good sectional time as well when a good closing sectional that day in the Moyglare. So I'm not having a bet in the race. I do think probably Pretty Pollyanna will be quite hard to beat. She does look the obvious one. But I wouldn't be surprised if Lady Kea outran her odds.
It's interesting, I thought anyway, there's 2 in here that have been supplemented for £20,000, and they're at big prices as well. Queen of Bermuda and the Mac and Bullet, 14s and 25s. Either of those, do you think, worthy to be here? Or
Queen of Bermuda is battle hardened, obviously ran a career best when winning the Firth of Clyde last time, so I guess with her running so well there, they're just thinking about taking a chance. But really, you're looking at from a ratings perspective, she's had plenty of goes already. You wouldn't think that she's going to be a great deal better than 102, which still leaves her with about a stone to find with Pretty Pollyanna on her best. So, and there's a quick turnaround involved with her as well, isn't there? Just 7 days. I think the markets looks to me more or less right in this race, apart from the fact that Lady Kea is possibly a bit overpriced because of the yard that she comes from.
So if I gave you a 5, you'd sneak it on Lady Kea?
Yeah, probably.
About 8-1?
Yeah, I think 8-1's very fair. I think if Aidan O'Brien trained her, she'd be with the same form, she'd be 3-1, wouldn't she, for this?
Okay, we'll go into the Middle Park Stakes now. 2-year-old colts this time around, and we've got one at the top of the market and top of the ratings, I think, as well. Really strong connections, and 10 Sovereigns has done very little wrong so far.
Exactly. he was turned out just 7 days after his debut, and he wouldn't have known it really the way he won. He absolutely bombed through the race, that round Tower Stakes. Already run to a Timeform rating of 114 just on his second start. It's a bit of a possibly it's a bit of a cliched thing to talk about the Aidan O'Brien 2-year-olds improving for their first run, but there's not that many of them that win first time out at all, and when one does, it's usually fairly significant. We say it plenty of times, but it does prove to be the case. They're usually far from clued up on debut. The fact that he was able to do that and then come out and win a group race just 7 days after. I mean, the amount of improvement that he's still got in him is hard to really gauge, to be honest. He's got the Timeform large P, which indicates he could improve significantly. Could be a stone more that he could improve here, and if he does that, then he's going to be extremely hard to beat. You're looking around for dangers. Emirati Anna, who's obviously changed hands, been bought by Sheikh Mohammed Obeid, obviously after winning the gym crack, but remains with Kevin Ryan. I think he's a horse that I like. He was very impressive on debut. He ran to a big Timeform rating at Windsor when winning over 100. Not too many horses run to 100 on debut. He then took a sideways step at Newbury, and then he's come out and won the gym crack in good style. He's a horse that will probably be one for next year. He'll definitely train on. I mean, he's still quite unfurnished. He's got a big frame to fill out. Whether he's good enough to beat 10 Sovereigns, we'll have to wait and see. But I thought he's an obvious one that could be a danger. I would have him as more of a danger than Jash, I think. I mean, connections think a lot of this horse, and he was obviously 8-1 on when he won last time. Absolutely bolted up there. He came off the bridle, but I thought that on debut he was still. Obviously, he was green. It was his first start, but he was looking around a bit. His head carriage wasn't ideal, and he's going to have much more of a race on his hands today. He essentially didn't come off the bridle at Salisbury last time, so we didn't get to see his resolution tested at all because it was like an exercise canter. But he'll have a race here, and it may be that sort of temperament is revealed a bit more. The only reason I'm really majoring on this is because his dam was a temperamental mare, and she actually refused to race on her last 2 starts. So there is some temperament in the pedigree, and he did look a slight bit quirky on debut. So it'd be interesting to see how he goes. But I would rather, if I was trying to back the second, find the winner without 10 Sovereigns. I think Emirati Anna would probably make more appeal than Jash. Other than that, I don't really have a strong view on the race. I think 10 Sovereigns is very, very exciting and will probably win. Yeah,
he's 4-1, Jash. He's very short considering the big step up in class he's taking.
Exactly. He won obviously the debut has worked out well. That Newmarket race, he has got form to his name. If you look in behind, the 3 that have run since in behind him have all won. So he has got substance to his form, but this is obviously a Group 1, and we didn't learn anything about him last time because it was just such a weak race. So I think he looks short, but he has got a big reputation at home, and I guess that's why he's only 4-1. But I think 10 Sovereigns, Emirati Anna maybe for second.
Okay, we'll leave it there, and we'll go from an odds-on favourite in a Group 1 to one of the most competitive handicaps of the season in the Cambridgeshire.
Yeah. And
I'm just going to pass it over to you and say, how do you attack a race like this?
Yeah, it's very tricky, really. I think you could bet in the race every year and have a few bets in the race every year and still not find the winner of it for 15 renewals, because it's one of those races, isn't it? I guess I probably won't be. I'll be having a few very small bets just for interest, really. It is, as you'd imagine, from a 10-1 the field, 35 runners. It's exactly what it says on the tin. It's essentially a Grand National, isn't it, for the flat in terms of how hard it's going to be to find the winner. The top-rated horse Mordin, I think, I can definitely see the case for him running well. He would be one that I will probably be getting on side at. He's around 20-1, I think. Still, he's a biggish price. he ran a really big time figure at Sandown last time, which, if that's to be believed, and if he runs to that sort of level again, then I think he'll be in the mix. It's a little bit disconcerting that he's finished second and traded short in running on 4 of his last 5 starts. So he is a horse that's possibly a little bit hard to win with. He tanks through his races and doesn't necessarily seem to battle that hard, but I think a big field scenario like this will suit him, because he's almost a horse that over races. So to get stuck in behind a big pace and a ferocious gallop will probably see him to good effect. Whether he's actually going to go through and win the race, I'm not sure, but I can see him running very well and finishing in the frame. You're obviously going to get 4 places at least if you're betting each way on this race. So he'd be a one to sort of keep an eye on. If he's 20 to 1 or so, I think that's a fair each way shout. Don't know whether he'll win, might well finish second again. I liked him. There's plenty of dangers. Sharjah Bridge is one that's probably still interesting. He absolutely bombed through a handicap at York last time, was travelling all over everything, was 1.26 in running, looked for all the world as if he was going to win. And for some reason, I think the official thing, or maybe he seemed to sort of stumble or lose his footing or something. It was really weird. I've not seen anything like it. I initially thought he'd gone and missed or something like that. It was a strange scenario, but basically before that he'd looked like he was going to go and win very easily off a mark of 106, and he's on an unchanged mark here. So I think you'd have to consider him. He's still had very little racing for Roger Varian. It's a typical patient campaign. He's coming to the back end of his 4-year-old season, and he's only having his 7th start, so he's probably got more to offer. So I didn't mind his chances. I wasn't mad keen on Wissahickon, the favourite. He's obviously progressing, but he ran a career best last time on the all-weather. He's by Tappet out of a US bred mare. There's loads of dirt for him on the dam side. So I thought, perhaps, I'm not saying he's an all-weather horse at all, but the fact that he's run a career best and been put up in the weights for winning on the all-weather now comes back to turf, which he's not necessarily as bred to relish as much. I wasn't mad about him at, he's 9-10 to 1, isn't he? The other one that may be worth mentioning, Aidan O'Brien, doesn't tend to have too many winners of these kind of handicaps, because his horses get marks that are very high, but this horse did win the Irish Cambridgeshire off a mark of 98, obviously an Irish handicap mark of 98, now off 106, but you'd have to say, based on what he did last time at Leopardstown in a Group 2, I think that's probably still an okay mark. He made the running in a really strongly run race. I Can Fly ended up with stablemate under Ryan Moore, ended up picking him up quite easily in the closing stages, but the closing sectional was 98%, which is very slow, so they were slowing down, indicating that Kenya had basically gone too hard in front. I don't mind prominent races in this sort of race either. I think the Rolling Mile was absolutely fine to lay up with the pace, so I think Kenya's definitely a runner. They would sort of be my 3 that I would tentatively put in against the field, but I'm sure a lot of other people have different ideas, given just how wide open it is.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Kenya. I suppose in a race where so much can happen, at least with him being in front, you know what you're going to get with him, and he's just going to try and pour it on.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure they're not going to want to go wild with him, but the way he's ridden it does seem quite one-dimensional, that you just fire him out in front. I don't think it's a bad spot to be in. You might think about it and say, well, there's such a big field, they're going to go mad in front, but it's not always the case. Depending on what else challenges him up front, and again, the draw will be perhaps interesting as well. If they've tacked over to that rail throughout the afternoon before that, obviously we've got all those straight course races. We might end up with a scenario where something will get on the rail from a high draw and just stay there. We'll have to obviously monitor that and keep an eye on it, but hopefully that won't happen in the Cambridgeshire, because it basically makes it a bit of a non-event if something gets a huge rail bias. But yeah, so those three would be mine against the field, but a very open race.
Yeah, what were those then? Sharjah Bridge, Kenya?
Sharjah Bridge, Kenya and Morden, just
Okay.
Morden would be more in each way, small each way, but I think he's still 20 to 1, but I can see him running well into the places. He would be my main fancy, I'd say, and he's also the top rated, so that helps.
Well, no pressure, but Matt Gardner got the E-Ball winner last month.
He did,
so.
yeah. So yeah, we've had one big handicap winner
Yeah.
for the 2 years we've been doing it.
Cheers, Ben.